Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers podcast. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk about everything going on in the world of TV and film. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me, as always, Grace Leeder. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well, Taran. Excited to chat about television with you. There's a lot of good things on, but I feel like everything's we're in sort of like you know, things are just coming out that are good, but there's not a lot of headlines, I feel like.
Yeah, we've got some newsy stuff to talk about, some interesting and I would say personally very exciting news to talk about in terms of upcoming announced projects and deals being made. Brandon Sanderson, Craig
Mhm.
Mazin, some interesting stuff going on there. There are, I think, some shows airing currently. Obviously, The Pit continuing to be very good. Big episode of Night of the Seven Kingdoms just dropped that people are very excited about. I'm very excited about. I thought it was very good.
Mhm.
And I've also watched a bunch of stuff. So I've got my my book reports ready to go as well. So
Okay.
plenty to talk about here today.
Yeah, I have been I've been watching the stuff that has been on, and I've also been trying to do my due diligence as a critic, a voter to make sure I've seen everything for a ballot that I am submitting in a few days. So I'm sort of like in crunch time of like all of these things. I'm also trying to do the Oscars. I believe it's called the Death Gauntlet. Is that the official name? I can't remember what the Reddit is, where you try to watch everything that got nominated. I went hard into the documentary category, which just means you
Mhm.
watch some of the saddest things you've ever seen in your life, Taran.
Man, even just
So
trying to watch the Best Picture nominees feels like one sad one after another at this point.
it's true. There is a lot of sad stuff in the it's the Death Race, not the Death Gauntlet, is what I was trying to find the name of. But yeah, the documentaries are like, do you want to watch this abortion clinic be protested? Do you want to watch this? This is a guy who takes photos of rooms of children who have been the victims of a mass shooting. You're like, oh my god, okay, so all the saddest stuff you've ever seen, I'll just watch it
Yeah.
in a row. So that's what my week has been like.
Well, that's honestly, it's pretty par for the course, I think, for
Yeah, fair.
Oscar noms, especially documentaries. It's hard to find like an Oscar nominated documentary that's like happy.
Yeah, is there even what there's like a short that's kind of like following some donkeys around. That's about as uplifting as you can get. I think it's a
Yeah.
perfectly a strangeness or something like that. So, but the happiest I got watching a documentary.
All right. Well, let me tell you, Grace, I've never come closer to calling an emergency tastemakers podcast than when I
Mm,
heard about Brandon Sanderson's deal with Apple.
yes.
If you don't know, Brandon Sanderson is, I would say, the most popular epic fantasy author in terms of like how well known he is in the genre, how much he's sold in the genre. He has, I believe, the most successful Kickstarter on the platform
Yeah.
for his secret novels, which were these books that he wrote during the pandemic secretly and just released a bunch of extra books. He's basically like the opposite of a George R. R. Martin in how prolific he is,
Yeah.
which a
Yeah.
lot of people appreciate. And
Yeah.
he
This guy's just like,
also,
oops, I accidentally wrote more books, rather than being
yes,
like, I didn't write anything. Yeah. Hmm.
very famously, the video was like, I have to apologize. Here's my apology video. I secretly wrote a book during the lockdown. Actually, it was two. No, sorry, it was four. Actually, no, it was like five. um, and so he also finished The Wheel of Time for Robert Jordan after he passed, which is kind of where he really got like his big break originally, I would say, in terms of like becoming really well known in the community. And so for a long time, and the big thing about Brandon Sanders is that most of his work all exists under one shared universe called the Cosmere. And there are some shared characters amongst these stories, but they often take place on different worlds in this universe. But all of these, books and series, they're connected in one way or another under this like big umbrella. And he's very, very good at world building. Um, and so the idea is that like this is essentially like the Marvel of fantasy, is what people often call it. But like truly from one mind, not like a bunch of different creators over decades, but from one dude who kind of has a long term goal in mind, like a long term plan in mind. And so a lot of potential for potential adaptation. And for over a decade, he's been kind of like shopping around and getting ideas and offers from various studios, and he's been very, very careful about any deal that he accepts because he's seen what's happened before to people like George Martin. And he famously tells a story about how he had shipped or sort of like been shipping around one story of his that won an award. And he got back like a treatment that was like, hey, we want to do this. Here's our version of it. And it turned like a very character driven story into like this random pirate story that was like, had almost nothing to do with his actual novel or novella in this case. And it was like, oh yeah, this person just wants to make their own story and are using my story as like a platform to jump off of. So he's been very, very careful and very, very judicious about like who he gives the rights to these things to because he has the ability to. This guy's very rich at this point. And he has finally made a deal with Apple, of all people, for what is being called like an unprecedented amount of control over his work. He has given them the Cosmere, the entire sort of universe of his novels, and the short term of this means that he is going to make a trilogy of movies based on the Mistborn trilogy, which are three of the earliest books that he wrote, and I think very, very well suited to a trilogy of movies. He is going to write the screenplay for these movies, and then he is going to also create a TV show based on his like magnum opus series, The Stormlight Archive, that he will serve as showrunner on, or co-showrunner at the very least. So people are like, this is certainly more control than George Martin has received, even more control than somebody like J.K. Rowling has received in the past. And so, like, really groundbreaking in that sense. And also, I would say, very exciting for a lot of people who are fans of his work, who are very interested to see what might come of something like this. Is a huge commitment. And at a place like Apple, who right now is kind of willing to just dump a bunch of money and allow a lot of creative freedom because they have the money to burn and they want to kind of like make a name for themselves. It's kind of like the perfect time to strike at a place like Apple. So it feels like a perfect storm, Grace, that all of this is happening, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting. I think that when you see that Sanderson announces that it's with Apple TV, it makes the most sense of any sort of place he could have gone. Seems like because it's all connected, he wants the same um place, so that immediately sort of limits him in terms of being able to make both movies and television, and not having to like split up his work amongst like a studio and like a TV studio and a movie studio. And then I think that when you look at the way that Apple TV, yeah, has been just I feel like between Apple and Amazon, these are the companies that seemingly sort of like are giving a little bit of carte blanche in terms of how much money they will give, but only one of these places is really like, I think, willing to just like let the thing ride. Amazon, I think, has a pretty bad track record now at this point in terms
Yeah.
of like stuff that has been purchased or looking to
They're
be
spending
adapted.
a ton of money on things like Rings of Power, and Wheel of Time, but then those things are not finding a lot of success. And from what we've heard of Wheel of Time, there were a lot of studio notes there. And Brandon Sanderson himself, of course, had experience with that. He was initially kind of like a consultant on season one of the Wheel of Time, but his suggestions were ignored sort of in favor of the studios often. So obviously he had a bit of a history with Amazon.
Yeah. You look at the stuff that Apple TV has been putting out, I think between sort of, I think the two best examples that like create the pathway for Sanderson to go to Apple TV are really For All Mankind and Foundation. I think these are two things that are just like continue to happen in a way that maybe feels surprising, because I don't think that they have necessarily, like, they are not the shows that everybody in the world is watching, and yet Apple TV is still willing to let them create seasons of this show, while also being able to have the success of a show that can break out, like Severance. I think on the other hand, while that has been like a bit of a like pulling teeth to get new seasons, it has had a huge amount of success that I feel like feels like it can sort of like legitimize choosing Apple TV, as opposed to, I think, the other two options being Netflix and HBO. And I think both are understandably places that don't make sense for Sanderson. Netflix specifically, while they might have a lot of money, and your show probably would be like the most watched show of anything that you could, anywhere you could go, probably. I think that the way that he writes about why he chose Apple seems to do a lot with the way content is distributed. That I feel like on Netflix, you not only don't necessarily have the creative freedom, and also you are kind of like one of the many things that they do that I don't think applies to being an Apple TV show. And then HBO, I think, is just, in addition to some of the ways in which IP and property has been bungled over there, is also like in the midst of a very complicated, what the future of HBO will be. So I think all of this, like, this is very exciting. I think if you are a fan of Sanderson's work, the fact that he chose Apple TV, I think for many different reasons.
He's a very smart guy. Again, like his sort of like business sense is clearly very strong. The way that he was able to turn his popularity into a much more sort of direct to consumer method with the Kickstarter way that he did that, even just the way that he framed that video that led to that Kickstarter. He's still doing Kickstarters. And just like he's very proficient in doing what he does. And I think that this was such a smart choice at just the right time. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out. I think this was also a smart decision for Apple. I do, like, a lot of people have been saying for a long time that the Cosmere could be like the next, like that truly could be like the next big property, fantasy property, whatever. It's not strictly fantasy either. It can be sci-fi also, depending on where you go in the Cosmere. Really could be the next kind of like Marvel / Game of Thrones / whatever, right? And so Apple holding on to that is very promising. Now, I will say there are some fears attached to this as well. For as much as I have enjoyed Sanderson over, like, the last couple of decades at this point, there has been like a critical mass of Sanderson where like not all of his work is doing as well as it has in the past, especially the Stormlight Archive. People have felt, myself included, it's gotten a little bit bloated. We're now halfway through. There's like 2 sections of 5 books in that series. He lost his editor that he had for a long time, and a lot of people have felt like since losing that editor, like he needs to find another good one to help rein him in at times. And then I think most crucially, Sanderson is not, he's known for a lot of things. He's very good at a lot of things. One of the things he is not known to be great at is dialogue. And in a fantasy series, that's kind of fine. Like it's never a huge problem in any of his novels. And his work is very, very readable. It's not a huge problem. But when he's screenwriting a movie, dialogue is going to be very, very important. And so some people are a little bit concerned about, like, is he going to have too much control over some of these screenplays, or is he going to make sure he brings in people who understand dialogue, especially in movies? Now, I will also say, again, this is a guy very smart. he has been for a very long time practicing and learning screenwriting. He spent some time making videos, analyzing screenplays. He knew that this was going to be something he wanted to do in the future. So he spent the last like 10 years training to do it. So, I don't think you need to be too concerned about the transition here. But I do think, how much additional help and support is he going to bring in for this stuff? I personally, I'm not that worried. I think he will pull in somebody to help, with the punchy dialogue if he needs it or whatever, right? Like, I think he knows what he's doing for the most part. But, and like I said, I especially think that the Mistborn trilogy of movies could really hit. They're not young adult, but they're close enough that it can kind of function in that way and really blow up with like younger audiences while also being really interesting for regular like older audiences. Mistborn approaches fantasy in a way that like deconstructs it just in just the right way that I think is very interesting. And I think like the general audience is familiar enough with the tropes of fantasy to really appreciate what Mistborn does to it. That like I really think this could be the right time for it too. That people are looking for something like that. So I kind of think it's going to work.
I am interested in terms of whether or not they will release these theatrically, which is like, we're such a long way off from any of this. Like, he has not announced anybody who is going to work on these. It literally is just like the deal got inked. Like, he will do these for Apple, and that is the extent to which we know anything about them so far. He is not even talking about like this, like being remotely even ready, even by the end of this year. We are talking like years away. But I do feel like Apple TV, the television side of things, has had, I feel like, cultural success in terms of like something like Severance and Ted Lasso. I feel like they have had that. Their
And
movies,
Pluribus recently.
Pluribus, their movie side of things, they recently basically sort of like retracted this idea that they would like do theatrical. They have done it. So Killers of the Flower Moon is an Apple TV thing, but there was the movie
F1.
Wolves. F1 was released theatrically, so that's a really good comp. Got nominated for Best Picture. Okay, that makes
and did very well in the box office.
And did super well in the box office. Okay, that does make me feel like yes, whether or not they this will be a thing for me though, in terms of like I do think to be culturally relevant, there's one of two things. You either have to do like a marketing campaign that like often is given to a theatrical run of a movie. And so like it makes sense to then do it for the theatrical movie, or you basically have to be on Netflix. So like K-pop Demon Hunters was not released on in theaters until it had already blown up on Netflix, and then they decided to do it. And so in terms of like whether it could be like a big thing, I do think it probably does need for the movies. I'm only really talking about the movies because I think on TV, Apple TV does, although they are like still a small percentage of people, like it's still smaller subscriber base. I do think they've been able to like have these shows that become sort of like cultural set pieces. So anyway, very fun, very exciting.
I fully agree. I think and granted, all of this is at least like 2 years away, right?
Right.
So who knows where we'll be in the cultural landscape 2 years from now when these things start potentially releasing. And that's the other great thing about Sanderson is that like he's good on deadlines. Like this guy, he's not gonna dilly-dally. But I completely agree. I think that like no film that wasn't either put out into theaters properly or was on Netflix has really properly like hit the cultural zeitgeist. I can't think of a single like Amazon, maybe was that like Red One movie on Amazon, but like
Yeah,
You know
that
what I
had a
mean? It's
theater
just
run, that
like,
had a theatrical run, right?
there you go.
Yeah, that they did a bunch of marketing. Like, I do think there's a misconception that, like, a movie does need to be released in theaters, but often what happens with a theatrical release is that it gets a marketing campaign to make people go to the theater, in which case that marketing campaign then also works for this is for me, like, there are a few movies from the last few years, like Megan, the first Megan, I feel like had this, where, like, I don't think a lot of people, if I looked at the box office, I don't think it was a sensation in the box office. I think what happened is it had a huge marketing campaign
Yeah.
for a theatrical run that then when it came to streaming, people watched it. There's like a weird one where like Cocaine Bear, I feel like had this as well. Five Nights at Freddy's, I know like that was like its own thing, but there are these like movies that like are mostly watched on streaming that have been successful, but I feel like they always are associated with a theatrical run that gets a theatrical marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, a lot of time spent on it, but genuinely, I have a lot of thoughts, and I think
Yeah,
it's very
fun.
interesting. Also, something that is interesting about it is that Sanderson is very open about this stuff online. He
Right.
made a Reddit post when this was
Right.
announced, talking about more details. On his website, he lists a percentage of, like, this is the percent of this book that is finished so far, and he updates it like regularly. He puts out regular content on YouTube talking about like his process and what's happening and updates. So, like, you can expect to hear a lot, probably a lot more than you would about how this process even works from him throughout. So, very interesting stuff. Stay on the lookout, over the next couple of years. I do think this has the potential to be something very, very big, or maybe it just flops. Who knows? But either way, interesting news. But it's not even all the news we have when it comes to upcoming announced fantasy properties,
Yeah.
because I did mention Craig Mazin earlier, who, of course, is currently still working on The Last of Us season 3. Now, interestingly, Craig Mazin, I believe, at one point had said we may need more than one more season to wrap up The Last of Us story. However, I think multiple things may have happened, including a less than stellar reception to season 2, and perhaps more opportunity. They are now talking about Last of Us season 3 like it is probably going to be the last one. And in addition to that, Craig Mazin has apparently signed on to showrun a new show adapting Baldur's Gate 3, the video game, similar to the Last of Us video game, purely a D&D fantasy video game. And unlike The Last of Us, this is not going to be an adaptation of the story of Baldur's Gate 3, nor is it like Fallout, where it's like, I exist in the world of the video games and they're canon, but also it's completely unrelated. This is a sequel, essentially, to the game. It picks up where the game left off. Now, I assume that they are not going to require you to have played the game because that would be absurd to watch this
Yeah. No. Yeah.
show.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that it kind of picks up where the game left off. This is a game widely regarded for its story, its characters, and weirdly, like, its customizability and your like interactivity with the story. So a lot of people are like, oh, are they going to pick one of the endings? Because there's wide variety
Yeah.
of them. But it's very exciting stuff.
Yeah, part of the fun of playing D&D is that you can essentially, like, I feel like one of the real light bulb moments of like sitting down and learning the game is it has all these rules, but then like basically the dungeon master is like, what do you want to do? And you can literally do anything you want. And so there is a little bit of that in terms of like, you could play a version of Baldur's Gate where you literally murder every single person you come across. Like, you could just do that, and you could, how fun that would be, I don't know. But yes, there are these like infinite paths in terms of like how the story is told. So very fun. I'm a huge fan of the D&D movie that came out a few years ago. I'm a big believer. Like, I think like I feel like I see this like once a month, is like, why haven't they made another one of these? Why haven't they like have the same actors play different characters? Like this idea that like in a game of Dungeons and Dragons, the dungeon master plays every bad guy. So like, why isn't what's his name who plays Hugh Grant, why isn't he just like show up as the bad guy in another movie, but it's like never mentioned that he's not the same guy? Like, there's so much fun. I think that movie perfectly balanced how like sort of serious the world can be and also how silly it can get in terms of like the magic and the things you do in a D&D game. So just like excellently executed. I'm a huge fan of the Baldur's Gate video game. I just like really interesting to like catapult off of a successful video game and then make the next one a television show. Like this seems incredibly unusual. I don't know if I can like pinpoint a time where this has happened. I do think the world is like so because if I am understanding, I believe the world is sort of like the official one of the official D&D worlds that's most commonly used. So like the idea that there
Yes.
is like more story to tell
It's
in this world obviously makes a lot of sense. So
it's kind of complicated and I don't fully understand it, so take this for what it's worth. But the Wizards of the Coast, I believe, is the company that owns Dungeons and Dragons, and they sort of signed off on Baldur's Gate being like an official, like they were involved in the whatever. Like there's an official sort of like world and set of rules for Dungeons and Dragons, with like places, and that's the like where Baldur's Gate sort of exists in this world with these rules. And Baldur's Gate is originally, I believe it was like
yeah, so
90s.
yeah, so I do okay, so yeah, and this is making sense to me. Baldur's Gate is set in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, which is a campaign setting where a bunch of different D&D adventures are set, but there are other settings like Greyhawk is one, I believe. There's some of these that are like mentioned, like name dropped in Stranger Things. I'm playing one in that's a Dragonlance campaign, which is set in the world of Kryn, I believe. There's also like Spelljammer World, which is more like a sci-fi setting, but under the D&D rules. So Forgotten Realms is one of the worlds, the settings that a lot of D&D adventures are based out of, and Baldur's Gate is one of them. So the idea that like this can intersect with a bunch of different stuff and sort of canon from different D&D adventure books makes sense to me, that they're like, oh yeah, we could do a television show and sort of build off the success of Baldur's Gate 3.
And the video game series, the first one was released in 1998. It was originally made by BioWare and Interplay, apparently, but I always remembered it as BioWare, who eventually went on to make things like Mass Effect, and Dragon Age, and Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. This is their heyday. When I was growing up, Baldur's Gate, I remember, was talked about as like this, like Baldur's Gate is like the best game of all time. Like everyone loved Baldur's Gate. It's a top down kind of like, I think they call them like CRPGs. So it was hard to sort of like play if you're used to more like a 3D kind of like environment. But they made Baldur's Gate 2, which was also very well received. And then the property went dormant for a long time. BioWare got bought by EA and then got shitified. And so what happened is this other company, Larian, picked up the rights to Baldur's Gate, made Baldur's Gate 3, which is similar to before, like not really connected deeply, and I believe, to the first two games in any significant way, but it's set in the same world. I think probably a long time later. You don't need to have played the first two games to understand the story of Baldur's Gate 3. Again, it was very, very well received. This is a game company that is like highly praised. They are now working on another, their other like IP at the moment. So there's I think no future plans for the Baldur's Gate series. And so the idea is they're going to pick up where this game left off, Baldur's Gate 3. And again, I assume you don't need to know much about it from there, but either way, Craig Mazin, I think, still has a very good track record between Chernobyl and certainly season 1 of The Last of Us. I was not as down on season 2 as a lot of people were, but I think that like it's very smart to not try to adapt the story of Baldur's Gate 3, but instead to like use it as a launching point. Even by using the same characters, you can kind of like go your own way with it. And it's also true to, as Grace, you just said, like the D&D experience, I would say, is like less about reliving what has already been done and more about like, let's make more stories. And so I think this has also some potential to be very good and interesting. And video game adaptations have performed really well lately. So I don't
Video
know.
game
This is
adapt
an HBO,
yeah.
by the way.
Video game adaptations, but also like one of the most successful mediums of entertainment right now is the actual play Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop role-playing
Yeah.
games, Critical Role and Dimension 20, two of the most successful, but there's many others. And so I think like tapping into um, this world with a scripted television show, like I mean there was the movie that got made, but I think a television show makes a ton of sense, and so it's unsurprising to me that somebody is finally like gonna try to capitalize on it by again launching onto like what was like game of the year a few years ago. You know, like an
Yeah.
incredibly successful video game. So very fun, very exciting.
Yes. All right. A couple of other things. Something that's been sort of like hitting the headlines. The movie called Iron Lung, which was
Mm.
made by a YouTuber, Markiplier, has been doing very well in the box office. At least sort of like comparatively. I think it's not like the biggest box office, couple of weeks, but it's performing very admirably. It's certainly like made a hefty profit at this point because it's very cheap to make. And this is worth noting because it's a YouTuber that has done this. And it's not his first foray into the world of like making television. He's
Yep.
made a couple of like TV shows. Um, but this is a movie, and it somehow managed to grab a national sort of release, and is now doing pretty well. Also, it's a horror movie, which I think helps a lot. Horror is like really good for box office success with low budget. But a lot of people have been talking about it. I don't have like too much more to say about it beyond like it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The interesting piece is that it was only initially slated to be in 60 movie theaters, and
right.
Markiplier essentially like galvanized his, and that even sounds negative, which I don't mean to sound be negative, but basically got his following of YouTube people to be like, hey, if I'm he just self-funded and made this movie. It cost about $3 million of his own money to make, and then once he had the finished product, he went to movie theaters and was like, will you play this, and will you show this at your theater? He, I believe, does have there's a distribution company, but they are not like a mass distribution that just was able to like negotiate the movie being in theaters. And one of the things that really happened was there's a really interesting Town interview, The Town, with Mark Bellany, where he interviews Markiplier. And Mark says that basically, like, it took one of the things that is a risk about doing this is like you have to give up a time slot in the movie theater. And they were worried that people were not going to go see it. And so one of the things that he did through his YouTube channel was say, like, I need you folks to go and like talk and call like movie theater and be like, I want you to play this movie. And the big thing about that is that I think like just Markiplier like being like, hey, please play my movie is a risk, but having people who like live nearby theaters be like, hey, if you put this in theaters, I will go and watch this,
Mhm.
allowed the amount of theaters it was in to grow, because people were actually, they were like, it wasn't just like this like hypothetical people might come. This is like, oh no, there are like people in this area who are saying that they will come. The other one I saw this sort of happen to is if you're a fan of the Dropout world, there's a movie called I think it's called Dead to Me, and is it might just be called Dead, but it's Izzy Rowland who's in the Dropout world, and they basically did a Kickstarter or like a GoFundMe or whatever to launch their movie. And the way that I saw that movie's distribution rollout happened was the same thing, where people who had funded it were asked to go talk to local movie theaters and be like, hey, would you ever play this? So there was a couple showings, I think, in Toronto that were basically just people going like, would you want to play this movie here? So yeah, I mean, he's made about, the movie box office has made about $35 million. The other piece of this that does sound really cool is obviously he would like to like make his money back, which he did. But the rest of it, he wants to basically like revenue split with people who are involved in the making of this movie. So just like using a different model of creation, distribution, release is a thing that like, this is like, I think we're more at the beginning of it than we are
For sure.
anywhere else. So yeah, just a very like interesting and cool. I have not seen the movie yet. I kept meaning to see if I could find a time, and I have not. I've heard it's like fine, like I've heard it's not bad, but it's also not like, it's not like the most amazing thing you've ever seen.
That's my
Um,
experience with Markiplier
yeah,
content, like
yeah,
the TV show he made.
yeah,
There's promise there, but it's not like all the way there
yeah.
usually. But But he has his fan base and people really love what he does, and he's very clearly very passionate about creating this stuff, which is very cool.
He also talks about like this is not a thing he tries to, in terms of like asking his viewers to like go and do this stuff. This is not a thing. He doesn't want to constantly be asking people to do stuff, so he only is doing it, he says, for moments where he feels really passionately about the thing he's doing. So yeah, just super interesting release and distribution model.
Yeah. And of course, new Disney CEO has been announced, the successor, theoretically. See how long it lasts.
Yeah, last time this didn't go very well when Bob Chapek stepped into the role. But it does seem, I mean, yeah, they've moved Josh D'Amaro into the CEO role. He'll start as the thing here is that like Disney Parks funds Disney right now. Like they basically like continue to just like make money. They raise their prices as well again, and that seemed to not have hurt them. So it does feel like this is like, this guy was so successful at doing the part that he was doing that we are going to move him up, and obviously Parks will continue to have a big piece of Disney as a whole. I think like for us here, what it means for like entertainment, it is interesting that it's Dana Walden was the head of creative and essentially like seen as somebody who could have got this job. She did not get the job, but she is becoming president and chief creative officer for Walt Disney. I think that the thing about Disney right now that I think is the most interesting is that I think that they are super, super good at making money off of the IP that they currently have. So you think about like their parks, this is what that is. You don't really go to the park being like, I want to see that new thing that I've never seen, but like you go because you're like, oh, I'm going to see all the stuff that I love in at the park, like I'm going to meet the Disney characters. I'm going to go on this Disney ride, I feel like they are most successful at being able to harness what they already have. The biggest challenge for them, and they talk about this a little bit in the Town podcast when they talk about D'Amaro coming on board, is that like it's kind of been a while since they made new Disney stuff. And I think that is like a thing that eventually like Disney will have to figure out. But for the time being, like if you look at what their like releases this year, they're doing a lot of the live action, like Moana live action remake is coming, it's going to be in theaters. They have new Pixar stuff coming. Like what's the last Inside Out probably being the last like super big new IP property, probably. I'm struggling to think
I mean, they got kind of like Zootopia kind of like crushed everything that they've done at this point. Frozen.
Yeah, Zootopia. So that's from about, what's the first one, like 2016-ish, about 10 years. Yeah, so like like there is new-ish, but I feel like they're really good at like, they bought Marvel and they bought they have all this IP that is worth a lot of money and they can make money off of it. I feel like their biggest challenge moving forward will be like eventually they will need new, or maybe they don't. Maybe this is like their model forever. But I feel like that says a lot about in terms of what we might get out of Disney content over the next few years, is the fact that they went with this guy who is very good at harnessing the IP that they already own and is successful, into money.
And they've talked about like slowing down the acquisitions, right? I feel like I heard that. So more about like just focusing on what they have and trying to make that work better, I guess is kind of the idea, which makes some sense. I think especially something like Star Wars. There was a Mandalorian trailer that dropped, and like I had forgotten that existed.
That it's coming.
I just feel like Mandalorian is one of the biggest dropped balls.
I agree.
In a long time, and like I don't even know anybody that's excited about this movie.
Me, I think I'm the only one. I'm
there
like,
you go.
just like cautiously. I kind of just think like, yeah, I do think they kind of like forgot what was so magical about the beginning of that show, but it's like I am definitely very excited to go watch Mando and Grogu, even if it just is an episode of the television show, as long as it's like a first or second season episode of the television show. Marvel is taking a big, like they're fully went back to like, okay, we'll bring Robert Downey Jr. back to be the big bad, that will be interesting for them this year. So yeah, we will see. And the other piece of this is that like last time when Chapek came on board, Iger didn't really leave. He is like fully basically leaving this time. He's like not going to be around. So it'll just be D'Amaro being the CEO, which is probably much better. But basically last time this happened, Chapek came and did it. Chapek came in to be like, okay, we got to fix stuff, and he tried to fix stuff, and then they brought Iger back to be like, no, all that stuff that you changed was bad, so we're gonna reverse all, like the television, like the Marvel television show stuff. Like these are the things that will be interesting to see what happens when tomorrow steps in. Like, what does he think things need to be changed? Will be interesting to watch.
All right. Lots of news discussion here, but there is some stuff airing. Of course, I mentioned Night of the Seven Kingdoms just dropped its 4th episode. There are 2 left in the season. And universally beloved episode. I think I saw as people were talking about how it has like a 9.7 on IMDb. This episode, I thought it was a fantastic episode. I had mentioned a couple weeks ago when the season started that I was like, I'm not sure if I want to watch this week to week, considering how short it is. I almost feel like it might be better on a binge. And I think that that might have been true for those first few episodes, but I'm actually kind of happy I'm now watching it week to week because I'm able to live in it a little more. And if I'd watched the whole thing at once, I feel like it might have been a little too one and done. Because there actually is a lot of meat to this story and like a lot that I want to kind of like be able to live in. So I've kind of retracted my. I actually feel like watching the show week to week is kind of it was a slow start, but it's kind of working for me. And I am looking forward to watching it now every week. Of course, it's going to be over in 2 weeks. But you know, nobody wants to say it because we've been burned too many times. But like, is Game of Thrones back a little bit? Like, are we back? I don't know.
I feel like there was a little bit of like, are we back in season 1 of House of the Dragon as well? And then
Exactly.
I feel like, but my feeling, I said this to a friend last night, that I do feel like I am buying stock in the when season 3 of House of the Dragon is airing, people like eating their words a little bit because of I think that they got kind of like totally screwed over by HBO in terms of the episode cut. Like they got told they had to like cut an episode and then they couldn't rewrite anything. And so like I think that there is other stuff in that season that I really detest, but I feel like I'm a little defensive of House of the Dragon at times. Yeah. That being said, I think this is like way more fun and way more like this is for everybody type of show than even House of the Dragon is. It's hard for me to say, like, you know, I watched it all basically in one day. So I really enjoyed it from that sense. This last episode, the thing that people kept saying at the beginning of the show was like, oh, it's a simple, small little story. And like, that is true. We are like, the character POV is from a guy who is like, not necessarily like, he is not, you know, on the Iron Throne, you know? And yet I do think the show has done a good job of like slowly, like, it's not like the show isn't a Game of Thrones show, you know, like it isn't connected to the rest of the things that happen in this world in a way that I do think is like, for me, as like a Song of Ice and Fire is kind of like the like fantasy universe that I'm like kind of the most invested in. I just think it's like such brilliant world building. And so like, as those things are sort of like being unveiled in this show, I think it is becoming more fun. And even the way that I think over this course of the show, this last episode sort of like presented what is going to be like the thing that like we are driving towards. And I feel like the way that they had seeded everything to build up to that, I thought was like, I'm trying not to really like spoil it in case people go back and like start from the beginning, but the ways in which like how many people are sort of like end up being involved at the end of the show was really kind of like masterfully done, I think, because we basically like met all the important people without really realizing how important they were going to be, if that makes sense. So it's been super fun. I've been really enjoying the Night of the Seven.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this too because I feel like, especially because Game of Thrones as a property is often known to be so dark and unforgiving and punishing. And there is some of that in this show, but like this show is so much more about like what we are capable of, like on a more optimistic note, like honor and what makes a true knight, and like trying to appeal to the best of us, which feels so antithetical to the world that has been created in Westeros, Song of Ice and Fire. And I think it so slots in. It slots in so well to our current space in our society, especially in the United States. That is like, I think that this is exactly what a lot of people are looking for in our culture right now, which is something that is a little more hopeful and optimistic. Like, we talk about Andor being very analogous to our current times, like, raising the flag of rebellion. This, I think, has a similar kind of vibe in the sense that, like, it is raising the flag of, like, is there any decency left in us? And I think that's a question that a lot of people have been asking lately. And so, this show, I think, is speaking to something in this moment right now, which is very, very interesting considering it was like written in the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking as I've been chatting with this show about the show with Philly on his podcast, Screen Page, and doing like sort of like longer deep dives in each episode. And the thing that I'm really drawn to in the show has been the exploration of the theme of identity, and this way in which like Duncan is trying. He has this idea of like what he wants to be, which is this like noble knight, and this idea that like kind of the only way to prove that thing is to sort of like engage in this violent like he's specifically an attorney, and he could either like compete in it and be successful and then become a noble knight, or he will just like die and like never be known and be like sort of forgotten to history. And it's the same thing that he has to do, which is like perform the acts of knights, is the same thing that will either give him this bounty or make him like forgotten. And contrast that with like some of the reveals that we've gotten over the last few episodes with other characters and the way that they are shaped by identity. This is going to be a wild thing that I'm going to cop this to. But I was interviewed Stephen Fishback about his book Escape recently, and I think that the overarching theme of that book being about identity. And if you haven't read it yet, I would encourage you to go out and get it and read it. And I think he does such a good job of exploring identity in the world of like reality TV in a way that I'm like really vibing with this show, as a way that's like exploring identity through, Westeros nights, but yeah, I think it's been really compelling. I think in addition to being like quite fun, it is quite gory and quite graphic. There are people you hate and people you are rooting for. And so it's been very fun.
Has been very fun. All right. I'm also catching up on a bunch of stuff. I've been watching a bunch of stuff. Is there anything else like current that we should bring up?
I mean, the pit continues to just sort of like roll along a little bit.
Great.
I think it's been so good still, but I don't think I have like much new to add on the pit. I'm a little behind on industry as well. I know Fallout ended, and people. I feel like nobody's really talking about it. Everybody I talked to was like, "Oh, I really like Fallout."
That was one of the shows I watched, Grace.
Okay,
I watched all of season 2.
Okay,
there you go.
What did you think?
I was kind of disappointed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, fair.
Especially because it's about New Vegas, which is a game I love, and I think has so much interesting potential. And there were so many moments during the season that I was like Leonardo DiCaprio, there it is, which is very fun and cool. But overall, while I thought it was like mostly solid throughout, I think especially with how it wrapped up, it felt too short and too fragmented. I think the finale especially, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the finale especially had an issue that I've noticed with a lot of especially finales lately, which is that like it had too many different storylines it was trying to portray at the same time and cut way too rapidly in between them, so that you could never get anchored in a single moment, because it was like you would cut into like, here's this storyline where this character is fighting this character, and you're going to be here for like 20 seconds, and then you're going to cut to the next storyline again. And it's just like, it feels like there's no stakes because I can't even get into this moment in this time. And that's kind of representative of how the season often felt to me as a whole.
Right.
Where it was just trying to do so many things at once, and it never fully felt like it locked in on any one of those things. And I don't know if this is an issue of like runtime or if it was an issue of like they did only spend a year making this show as opposed to waiting a little bit longer. And maybe they weren't sort of like prepared for that in the way
Mm.
that they maybe should have been. I'm not sure, but overall, it just kind of like I was not I didn't like it as much as season one. It felt less coherent than season one did, as it tried to expand into more places, but without more time to do so.
One of the things I always am really impressed by is like when you watch a finale that does manage to sort of like bring everything together. It's like a really impressive feat that like when you see it not work, you're like, oh, there's too much going on, and so it makes it extra impressive when they can figure it out. And yeah, I have heard this because I'm not finished quite finished this season, but I have heard this that yeah, it's just a little bit like I think people wanted a little bit more from it. So yeah, too bad.
I have also I am caught up on Industry. I finished season 3. I'm
Ooh,
caught up on season 4. I thought the season 3 was very good. I thought that it like basically how this works. Again, no real spoilers here. Is the season 3 is essentially like a series finale, and
yes,
season 4 is kind of a soft reboot of the series. Um, which and season 3 is already so different feeling to me than season 2 even was.
yes.
Um, Season 4 so far has been interesting, um, and very like hit or miss for me. Some of the episodes I felt like and then some of them I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that's it for me right now. Maybe we'll check back in once the season ends, but that's kind of my impression of Industry right now. Season 4 is like some of it is like early season and just early Industry where I was like, and some of it I'm like later season 3 stuff where I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I feel like my analysis of the show was like them figuring out what they wanted to do and like sort of like forget like losing stuff that wasn't of interest to them. And I felt like my feeling going from 3 to 4 was like I felt like they kind of like figured it out in season 3 and they moved in season 4 and they were doing new stuff again. I was like, no, wait, hold on. You like threw out too much of the wrong. Hold on, like you reset wrong. I think so. That's a little bit of how I am feeling at the moment with
I think that's
Industry.
a
Where
good take on
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So you know,
Um, I also started season 3 of School Spirits, which is
okay.
it's more of the same. There's nothing new here. If you like it, you'll continue to like it. It's fine.
Yes, a show
Um,
that you told me about a couple years ago when I guess last year when it came out for season 2,
yeah,
and then I forgot existed until you told me you started watching season 3.
I forgot it existed until season 3 came out again.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I finished Spartacus, House of Asher.
Uh-huh.
I will say it was fun, not as fun as the OG Spartacus seasons. It took a little longer to get where it was going than I wanted it to. But what I will say is the finale is wild.
Okay, fun.
It ends pretty well. So if you are deep in the world of this like Spartacus style, I think it's worth watching. You know, if not, it's maybe not. But what I will say also is that I think it by the end, it probably I think it won over many of its early critics as well.
Okay.
Those that stuck around. Um, I also watched all of The Institute, which is a Stephen King adaptation from
Oh,
a little while
yes.
back last year.
Mhm. On
And
MGM Plus. Mhm. Got
yeah,
renewed though.
it did, I believe, get renewed. It was um I gave it like a 6 out of 10, and it's a perfect representation of I think what a 6 out of 10 is. Um, where it was like entertaining. It has that hook of like the Stephen Kingness while also just feeling really low budget because it was. And there were in particular some of like the action scenes were outright like embarrassing in terms of how they were like filmed and
Mm.
blocked. But it was fun enough. It was, you know, it's a very sort of like lowbrow kind of like entertainment. The main character is a genius child who has like psychic abilities, who's kidnapped into this institute that sort of uses children with psychic abilities. Um,
Yeah,
so it
I've
has that
yeah.
very like young adult kind of like, oh, it's a fun concept kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm on the Wikipedia. I clicked on the Institute, like the King novel Wikipedia page. And it was like, when his parents are murdered, he's kidnapped by intruders and awakens an institute, a facility that houses other adopted children who have telepathy or telekinesis. I was like, you're telling me Stephen King wrote a novel about a boy who has like mind powers? How they won't believe it.
Yeah. And then finally, I also watched all of Wonder Man.
Yes, I watched some Wonder Man as well.
Which was a very pleasant surprise. This is
Yes.
speaking of
Disney and Marvel.
Yeah, and Marvel. This is a Marvel show, and I honestly, trying to think about it, and I hadn't thought about this before, but thinking about it right now in this moment, I think it's probably my favorite Marvel TV show that I've watched.
Ooh, of any of the Marvel TV shows?
I can't think of any other that like stuck the landing all the way through. Maybe Agatha All Along is the closest, but even that one, I didn't like as much as this one.
I think your options for like stuff that people like are probably, I mean, people really like Daredevil. But if we're talking like new
Daredevil
Marvel
season
stuff,
1 is kind of cheating, but fair. I did like that one a lot.
but it's got to be all like at this point it's got to be all of that. So like, I know people really don't like the end of WandaVision. I do have a lot of fondness for WandaVision.
Early WandaVision was great, but it didn't stick the landing. This is the thing about Wonder Man, is that it's got a unique tone in terms of like superhero story, and it doesn't let go of that tone. There's one episode that kind of drifts, but it stays character driven the entire time, and that was what I was scared it would not do, and that's what it did well.
I watched the first 2 episodes. I did really like it. I just was waiting to watch a little more. I feel like the surprising thing here is like this idea that they sort of like dropped this rather quickly. They dropped it all on one day, so it was available to binge, which based on the quality of the show seems a little surprising, I think, for people. But perhaps just better to sort of dump it.
It's a good binge. I binged it in one sitting, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if it is bingeable, then perhaps there was some method to this madness. But yeah, I do feel like people are like people who have watched it and love it are like a little annoyed. They're like, why'd they just like sneakily put this out? But
like I didn't even know it was coming.
Yeah.
And then it just dropped out of nowhere. Especially because I've not been excited about Marvel TV shows in a long time. I heard decent things about it. Basically, the premise is that there is a man with superhero abilities who is keeping that on the down low, who is also an aspiring actor. And it's a little bit like The Studio, a little bit like Entourage.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't shy away from like, hey, here's like Joe Pantoliano. Like here's he's working on American Horror Story. Here's a person who got a job on Severance. Like they're very open about all this stuff, which really adds to it. It was just a fun time. Also, Ben Kingsley is back as the actor who portrayed the
let me see what he
I'm getting Mandalorian in my Mandarin, I think is what is something like that.
Yeah, it is the Mandarin. Yeah.
Okay,
the Taran Leeder, the Mandarin. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The Mandarin, yeah. It's a Mandalorian. I was like, wait a minute, is it Mandarin? Or am I only thinking of that because of Mandalorian?
Yeah, it was in Iron Man 3 and then he was in Shang-Chi as well. But yeah.
Just a really fun and enjoyable show. I highly recommend it. I think it's a good time.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed what I've seen. I will watch more. I think Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is like very good. I think Ben Kingsley is very good in it as well. Yeah, the other Marvel stuff coming. There's another season of Daredevil Born Again coming. I think next month. I believe season 2 is coming, and then Vision Quest is coming. Mm-hmm. So more Vision later this year. So yeah, interesting.
All right, those are the shows I watched. Any other shows to talk about? I got some movies as well.
Not shows. I have some movies. Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you start us off with some movies?
Yeah. So the movie that I watched I didn't see anybody really talking about this, and I really liked it. It's called It Ends. It is. It looks like maybe is it getting a theatrical release later? It was on the Letterbox Video Store. It seems like a little while ago, which was a new thing that was happening. Yeah, it looks like maybe Neon acquired it and it's going to get a theatrical run later this year. So I'll just put this on people's radar. It is a horror film where the premise is these like four sort of like college age kids are in a car. They're driving together on this like forest road, and they eventually realize like the road just isn't ending. Like there's never a turn off for the road. They like wonder whether they missed the exit. The first time they stop down, people come and try to attack them, but not to attack them, to try to take their car. And that's basically as much as I want to say.
Premise.
Yes, obviously it is like it's it's horror, and it's obviously like probably very cheap to film because it's mostly just four people in a car driving on like a back forest road. But I thought this was like extremely good. And I guess that's why I hadn't heard that much about it, because it got released on the Letterbox Video Store, and then I guess Neon acquired it to release next year or this year. So yeah, if you get a chance to check that out, I would highly recommend it. I thought it was very fun premise. That's it. The other things I've been watching are all of these like Oscar documentary movies, so I won't bore anybody with those. Yeah.
All right. Well, I watched Roof Man.
Oh, fun.
Channing Tatum movie about a criminal who robs or hides out in a Toys R Us after breaking out of prison.
The naming of this is because like he goes to prison the first time because he like hides on the roof of buildings and goes in. It's based on a true story, and he like goes in the morning and like robs them. But then like the main premise of this movie is that like he's a criminal on the run hiding out in a Toys R Us. So he's not living on a roof while he's doing that. But like, yeah, so Roof Man, interesting.
I pulled up the poster from the IMDb here. And this is like, I think the most common response I saw to this movie, and it's the exact same one that I had, which is, oh, I thought this was going to be a comedy, and it's not. It's just not. The poster implies pretty heavily, in my opinion, that it is. And in fact, it says dark comedy is the first like genre listed here. I do not think this movie is a comedy. I also kind of had an issue with the way it portrayed a real life criminal because it was incredibly sympathetic. In a way that I genuinely kind of thought was inappropriate. And so I did not love this movie, unfortunately. I think I was kind of hoping it would be like a little bit of a reprieve from all the downers that I was seeing that were like Oscar nominated. And it was in many ways more of a downer to me than some of them.
Yeah, I think Kirsten Dunst is really good in this movie, and I actually think if the movie was like more framed from her perspective, I actually think that like I think it's a little better, because part of this is that like she's kind of a person who kind of gets like swindled by him, and then like how she should or shouldn't feel about that. I feel, although like part of the thing is like so much of the movie like she doesn't know that's happening. Yeah, it's this is a movie that when it was playing at TIFF, I saw it and I didn't dislike it, but I felt like everybody else was so much higher on this movie than I was. And then it kind of like it came out a few weeks later and didn't really have, I think people still were like, yeah, it's pretty good. It didn't sort of blow up or anything. So I felt like a little bit vindicated that I was like a little down on it. And it is kind of one of those things where I do think the like true story is perhaps more interesting than than everything that's depicted in the movie. Peter Dinklage is also pretty fun, I think, in this movie. So it has its moments. I'm always a little, I feel like I want to like Channing Tatum as much as other people seem to like Channing Tatum. But yeah, Roof Man.
I also finally watched Hamnet.
Yes, okay. What did you think?
I have a very like complicated relationship with this movie.
Yes.
Because in many ways, Hamnet was what I feared Train Dreams would be.
Yes.
In that, like, for much of the movie, I felt very detached and like a little bored. It was just very slow and plodding. And of course, without like majorly spoiling the sort of function of this movie, there are some big tragedies that occur that were very compelling to watch, obviously, but like definitely just like a big bummer.
Yes.
And I was most of the way through this movie, I would say, thinking, damn, just not for me. This is just not working.
Yes.
And then in the final about like 20 minutes, I was
Yeah.
like, that was incredible.
Yeah, the ending is so good, and I feel again, like, I feel like I'm, like, super biased because I had this experience of a full a full theater watching this movie, and, like, that stuff happens, and, like, so everybody's sort of like it's a symphony of, like, sobbing, and then it just sort of, like,
Mhm.
ends, and so, like, I'll never kind of forget that moment, of having watched the movie, but like, I haven't rewatched it, and I'm kind of worried I will because it's kind of gonna like taint that movie going experience. But I do think that like totally tracks you were feeling like a little like, yeah, okay, yeah, like I see, I get, okay, whatever. And then the ending is the ending. And it, for me, it like completely worked on me. So
For me, it saves the movie, and really, in my eyes, the entire movie is a setup for the ending.
I agree.
And you can't really have the ending without the rest of the movie, though I do wish that the rest of the movie was more my speed. And this is, I think just a thing with me and Chloe Zhao. I don't think I've loved how she paces and sort of like does her filmmaking. Unfortunately, especially because she's so talented. But I can see why I was having a little bit of trouble. I was like, this is a little soapy.
Yeah.
But by the end, I was like, I can see why this is so well regarded because this was very, very compelling. But not my favorite, despite how much I did like the ending.
I'm super
Train
attuned.
Dreams, I
Yeah,
enjoyed
you
more.
like it more? I'm super tuned, I think, to Clojat. Like, I think that, like, she's, like, maybe a person who's, like, d designed solely to make movies for me, maybe? Like
Well,
like,
no,
that
I
might
think a
be the
lot of
case.
people really like what she does because
I
she's also the person, if you don't know, who made Nomadland, which
That's
also was a
true.
movie that just didn't work for me. I didn't connect to it in the way that a lot of people did.
I do agree, but I do feel like it's real, like, I don't know, like, festival movie brain that, like, people who like it, and then Nomadland obviously went on to win, like, Best Picture,
Mm,
and so it obviously has, people who love it, but I also think Nomadland is one of those movies that, like, kind of people are like, actually, that one, like, is like there's this thing, I don't know how to describe, like, to best describe this because I feel like Hamnet gets this critique too, where it feels, like, artificially made to be a favorite of a certain type of like critic or award voter, like, and I
yeah.
think like Nomadland kind of gets that critique too, where it's like it's almost like too produced in a factory for like the exact, like output that
Which is strange because it's so naturalistic.
I know, and, like, Chloe Zhao got, like, a lot of, like, I think, like, unfair flack. She, like, led a breathing ceremony before the Hamnet movie, like, premiere one of the premieres at TIFF, and, like, people thought it was kinda, like, hokey, and I'm like, I feel like this is her. I don't know. I just, like, I do really vibe." Like, I'm not being like, "Oh, I'm the only one who likes Chloe Zhao," but I do feel like there is this segment that do really vibe with what she's making, and then there's this other segment of people who I think, like, do watch a lot of movies and love movies and are like, I think like they don't want these like blockbustery, like they love the art form of movies, who are kind of a little bit turned off by like what Chloe Zhao. And I feel like Hamnet coming out of festivals felt like the front runner to win Best Picture in a way that people also like. There's a little bit of
Mhm.
like always root for the underdog type thing that was going on with Hamnet as well. So it is what it
I
is.
will say there was a moment in Hamnet where I was taken out a little bit by like, okay, we're really going for it, huh? Like
I'll have to think about.
like
I'll have
we're
to ask you off
really like
camera what I think.
milking
Yeah.
this trauma. Like we're really like, oh yes. Where I was like this and maybe that just came from like the preconceived notion of like the way that this film is being perceived as well,
But I think
but
people who are more in line, like, take that critique and feel like it applies to like everything in the like that is like I think like what people feel like that like like you're just doing the thing to make it to make us like it's so interesting, this idea of like
it
you're
felt like it was trying to manipulate me at
yeah,
times.
which is so interesting in a way which like aren't all movie like and I like
Right.
I like and I don't mean that as like dismissive of that critique, like so what is the difference between like sort of like artificially manipulating you and like genuinely But like
Right.
that's what music does in a movie, you know, like it's about
Mhm.
like, you know, so I just think it's really interesting. Yeah.
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 Well, speaking of, there's one more movie. I watched it last night. That also I have a very interesting relationship with, and also felt very manipulative at times, but in a very different way. I watched Sarat.
Okay, I haven't watched this
Um,
yet, and I need to watch it because it's on like it's nominated, I think, for an Oscar. So I do need to watch it. It's
yes.
very it's a fine. I feel
Best.
like a new movie that you've watched before me is
It is
very
rare. I
interesting.
was kind of
Yeah.
expecting you to have seen this.
No.
Best sound, best foreign, best international feature. Um, And yeah, I definitely need you to watch this. I would love to like actually have like a whole discussion about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um I honestly I don't want to say much about it beyond like it was not what I expected in many ways. And I think it's one of the most interesting movies I've watched in a while. I like I said, I watched it last night. I'm still processing my thoughts about it. Um and I recommend not really going in like I think you can go in with expectations with sort of like the basic premise. I kind of had to look up the basic premise because the movie, I will tell you, starts with like a 15-minute rave scene. So like I was like, what is this movie about already? But um, but man, it is interesting. And I will say probably not everyone's cup of tea. It would be my guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
This is a movie that is, I think, like the thing I've seen from like movie critic people, like movie buff, movie fanatic, cinephile people, is like extremely polarizing. Where the people are like, either like this is so incredible, and it's like so like I can't believe it didn't get like more recognition than it did. Did it get? I think one of the things people are most upset about, because I think it is nominated for best international feature. I
yes,
just want to look up what
international
categories it is.
feature and best sound.
Uh, uh, isn't it not nominated for best? Isn't that one of the controversies at the moment that it is not, like the weird? Oh
I
no,
see
it is.
here
It is for best
best sound.
sound.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
And
yeah.
at first I was like, what? Because of the rave music. And then by the end of it, I was like, okay, fair.
Oh, I think people are upset that it wasn't nominated. Is it not nominated for best score? Like that's what people are. Where
Oh, maybe.
yeah, I think the Oscars has had a little bit of like anti-technical, like Challenger's not getting score nomination is like so stunning to me, and that I feel like I saw somebody talking about like, yeah, they're biased against the techno beats, but
Mm,
I'm excited to watch this. I have it on. It's a little tricky to track down in Canada at the moment. Is
yeah,
is the issue that
it
I'm
was
having.
a little tricky.
So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I feel like the polarization exists in myself. I'm still not
yeah,
entirely
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
There were many times during this movie that I was watching it that I was like, I hate this movie. Like
yeah,
actively,
yeah, yeah,
I don't like this movie.
yeah.
But I think I might also love it. So, it's yeah. Um, so with that in mind,
Yeah,
you can
go
go see it.
explore.
Luckily, it's just under 2 hours. I think if it had been longer, I don't know if I would have been able to do it.
Okay.
But what I will say, especially, is like I think if you are the kind of person that enjoys something that feels different and or unexpected, I think that this could be for you. Um, so that's it. I watched Sadat. I have not given it a rating yet because I'm still not sure.
Okay, fun. Yeah, I'm excited to. I'll try to check this out this week.
All right. That's about it. It's about what I've got for you in
Same.
terms of what I watched. I did watch quite a bit, but
Yeah.
it's continuing to just watch things that I'm really enjoying. I really feel this is such a good year for shows and movies. I feel like I have genuinely a lot to update when we do an updated like
I think
best
it's
of
good. Yeah.
list for 2025.
Yeah, I didn't say this up top. I even gave myself a reminder just before we came live. We have a Facebook group, Tastemakers Facebook. You can find it on Facebook, and you can join there. Once we've been asking people like what they've been watching, so it's been very fun to get posts, and I'll post more, news and things as they come out, and talk about things. Last week, obviously, Mary and I talked about Heated Rivalry. So, she did ask me to ask you, and I've already spoiled it. But when are you coming to the cottage, Taran? Was the thing that Mary wanted me to ask you. And see what your reaction was. Yeah, okay, nope, nothing. Good, perfect. But I want to know what folks would like us to do. That was another request in the Facebook group, was like people enjoying sort of spoiler recaps. So if there are specific things people would like covered more deeply, even it could be on weeks where Taran is on, but also if there's a thing that Taran and I should be diving into, let us know.
I think given that we're both likely to have seen all of the Best Picture nominees, I wonder if there's like,
Agreed.
at some point close to the Oscars, like let's do spoiler discussion for every one of them.
I love it.
You know,
Let's do it.
That might be kind of fun. Although we might have already talked about some of them, but
That's
I don't
okay.
think so.
Probably not in like full spoiler detail.
Yeah.
It'd be very rare that we had done that.
All right. Well, that's it then. That's what we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a great time. I feel like there's so much to talk about. And
Sanderson talk.
Yeah.
Is there anything coming up? I'm trying to think if there's anything coming up in the next little while. Let me just see. I mean, I'm watching a lot of Olympics at the moment.
Olympics are happening. I'm not really a Winter Olympics guy personally. Maybe I could get it more involved, but none of the sports are like super engaging for me personally.
Yeah, it's a little slow, I feel like, at the beginning. I did watch The Muppet Show, which I forgot to talk about. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a good time, and I would like them to do more. I don't think it was. A lot of people hate on the new Kermit voice, which I do get, and also
I heard about that.
I guess it is a little silly thing. Like there has to be someone who could like nail basically like a Jim Henson Kermit, but like also I don't know. It doesn't bother me as much as everyone else seems to. I thought it was very fun. I thought the songs and the sketches were very good and very fun. And like, I'm very down for them to do more of this. Like, it's kind of weird that they're like, they only did one. Yeah, not a lot coming in the next little while. A lot of like random shows returning. The Artful Dodger, Cross, Dark Winds, The Night Agent. These are all shows that I am not particularly.
Night Agent season 3 is coming. Paradise season 2 is coming in a couple of weeks. Which is very fast again, I would say. But yeah. So, not I would say not a lot on the immediate horizon at this moment, but that's kind of fine because there's so much I think to catch up on and to currently enjoy.
Before the end of the month, new Scrubs comes back, Taran.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
February 25th, same night that Survivor 50 premieres. So we'll all be watching Scrubs, I believe.
Yeah. I can give a small update. I ended up reading the novella Train Dreams.
Fun.
I should say listening to it because it was also narrated by Will Patton. Same narrator from the movie, which is very fun.
That's great. I love that.
And I haven't looked it up yet. I don't know if he did the audiobook first and then they took him for the movie or vice versa. I think I preferred the movie, but the novella was still very good. And I don't know if I've mentioned this. I think I probably have, but I am currently deep into finally after a decade. I'm finally reading through One Piece as well. So
yes,
I'm getting quite far into it. I'm into like the 700s now. So
I am I am reading Hamnet at the moment. So it looks like
the novel.
Yeah, it looks like he did. It looks like he did Train Dreams in 2011, and then got cast in it many years later, which is very fun.
Very cool.
Yeah,
he's perfect. He's perfect to narrate that book. So
great. Yeah, I'm reading Hamnet, which is I'm almost done. It's been fun to read through. That I do quite like reading through a book that has been. I'm like the opposite of what everyone else does, where they like read and then watch. I watch and then read because I'm such a visual person. I feel like it like helps me visualize what's happening.
I think I like reading first, and then watching generally. But yeah.
I've been chatting with a group of we play D&D together, and there's talk of a book club joining because everybody seems to be on the verge of reading the Robin Hobb, the Assassin's Apprentice. That's the first.
Assassin's Apprentice is the first one, yeah.
The series is
the series. The first trilogy is the Farseer trilogy.
There you go.
The whole series is the Realm of the Elderlings.
There you go. A lot of momentum right now for us to be book clubbing.
Well, that's exciting. Grace.
Yes,
I would do a spoiler book club.
Okay, good.
That 2 people would listen to.
All my book club will listen to it.
There you go.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Yeah, can I promote just for I'm writing
Yes.
for Parade and Popeyes, so go check out that stuff. This entering cinema, we're counting on the movies. Phil T came on to join for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and this week will be Oh Brother Where Art Thou movie. I love Oh Brother Where Art Thou. So very fun week there. I'm on social media at Hi from Grace.
There you go. You can find my Patreon, Taran Armstrong, or check out my book, Behind the Mirror, taranarmstrong.com. And that's what we have for you this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see all of you next time.